April 10th meeting of the Fitchburg City Council's Legislative Affairs Committee. With us this evening are Councillors Walsh and Kuchar and myself, Anthony Zarella. We have 4 items on the agenda this evening and several people interested in speaking. Both I see present in the audience and I have several on Zoom. So what I'm going to do this time around is take each item as it comes rather than having one public comment session up front, just so that by the time the item comes up, none of us have had a chance to miss anything that was said. So we're going to begin with item number 09224. Oh, joining us now is Councillor Cragen, for the record. We're just beginning with 09224 to amend the City of Fitchburg local room occupancy excise to 6% pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 64G, Section 3A. Madam Mayor? Madam Auditor?
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
We have before us proposal to raise revenue for the City of Fitchburg, to raise the room tax rate from 4% to 6%. This is incumbent upon the City of Fitchburg in order to maintain our services, that we raise revenue. However, this revenue that we will raise from this hotel tax will not directly affect our budget, and it will not directly affect our budget next year. It will be more of a we'll use it for a snow and ice fund, basically. So we won't be able, so that'll help supplement that from free cash.
So our, as we talked about last year at budget season, our revenues have our revenue estimates that we can use toward, the tax rate have, we've really pushed the ceiling on those. We can't really move much further. And yet, as we, talked about in the last session, the health insurance costs are going up. We're trying to attract and retain employees. So at some point, we've got to move forward in terms of revenue. As the mayor mentioned, this particular 2%, it will generate probably about $750,000. It'd be a 50% increase on the one hotel we have in town. And because it is a single entity that could be subject to business disruption as we experienced during COVID, that's the reason we don't rely on it fully in the budget, because if something were to happen, then we would have this massive hole in revenue deficit in our budget. We did push the reliance on this revenue already in the last budget to a pretty uncomfortable level, and we really don't want to go beyond that. So we already are relying on the 4% to a pretty great extent. This 2% we would not add into our budget when we try to balance it in the fall, but it will pass through to free cash, and as you know, every year we need those standard appropriations, whether it's snow and ice, the stabilization fund, things like that. So it will pass through and be able to support those efforts as well.
In addition, I have a few numbers. The City of Fitchburg, the last time we raised the hotel tax was in 1997, and that's really when we instituted the tax in its infancy because of the first hotel that was built. So from 1997, when we instituted the 4% tax, we have not attracted any new hotels since that point. In addition, starting in July, there will be 170 municipalities and towns, municipalities that have a 6% full hotel tax rate, and only 40 that have a 4% tax rate. So the vast majority of municipalities have this 6% tax rate.
Thank you. I'll just start off by asking, do you have any estimate, approximately, nothing we're going to hold you to, of how much additional revenue this extra 2% would give us?
Approximately 750,000.
750,000.
750. All right. Did you say that already?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Okay, 750,000. Questions, Councillor Walsh?
Thank you. Do we know offhand, and I know this is speculative, but do we know what effect this might have on that one hotel's business?
I spoke to the general manager of Great Wolf Lodge, and he basically had the sentiment that while no business wants to see any tax at all or any tax raised, he indicated that 2% is not going to stop people from coming to Great Wolf Lodge, New England, and that he understands why that this would need to happen.
And it's my understanding from on a tax such as this that it really isn't going to affect as much the people who who are residents of Fitchburg, but people who are coming from other places, correct?
The majority of the people that utilize
Right.
the hotel in Fitchburg are not
Not from Fitchburg.
themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Was that a hand?
Sure. My apologies for coming a little late. I was at the Veterans meeting. We are going to have an Orlando Boss banner in front of Monument Park is the plan, which is great.
Nice.
Thank you. Not on the agenda, just a side note. I've been thinking about this since having a meeting in the auditor's office some months ago with some of my colleagues, and I also agree. I have family members who drive great distances from other New England states who have the time of their lives at our local hotel, fun park, just extraordinaire, and I'm very much in favor of this because I think that 750,000 was more than I thought it would be, so I will be very much in favor of voting for this.
And one more question. I believe we talked about this when we spoke about this initially. I don't recall if you had been able to pull any numbers. Were you able to find out how many, basically how much additional cost has been incurred by the city in terms of additional calls for emergency services to Great Wolf since it was opened?
We weren't able to pull that data out specifically.
Okay.
But, we have the West Fitchburg Fire Station, the Oak Hill Fire Station, and it was identified after the current hotel facility was built that the calls for service from the West Fitchburg Fire Station to that do not meet, NFPA standards, which requires that, at some point, when we are able as a city to relocate that fire station to, another location, and that is incumbent upon the location largely of, this hotel facility.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was kind of the point I was looking to make, is just that by no means are we, as a city, I think, looking to soak Great Wolf because they can afford it or anything. It's rather that there is justification for charging them more because they're costing us more.
We generally don't have charges for services, for calls for service to the fire department for, a microwave fire or a fire alarm trip or, an emergency ambulance service, these kinds of services that the city provides. So, there is cost.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Krucher?
Just speaking from a Ward 3 perspective, there are quite many times when the fire department is on their way there to Great Wolf for either a call or somebody pulls the fire alarm or something to that effect, and they just wind up and turn right back around without even getting there. So there is quite a bit of activity going on at Great Wolf Lodge in regards to the need for the fire department. But normally it's soon canceled before they get there.
Right.
So
Yes, that's a very good point, Councillor. I did not mean to imply in any way that Great Wolf has a high number of actual emergencies or anything.
Right.
Simply that there are additional calls for service. And so this would help to offset that as well as making our budget healthier.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion and second to approve, being that there is no objection. It is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
And I apologize, actually. I forgot to ask if there was any public comment on this matter. Am I correct in assuming that everyone here is here for 272-23, the solar zoning? Okay. Just making sure, because if for any reason I do forget to ask for public comment at that point, feel free, anyone, to kind of raise a hand and flag me down, because I don't want to accidentally skip past that. All right. Next up, we have 09723, a petition to review disclosure of a municipal employee pursuant to Chapter 268A, Section 20A, B sub B, and to approve the same. This was before us before. I believe we held it because there was some information we didn't have at the time. But to be perfectly frank, I don't recall what information we were waiting on. I saw you were nodding, Councillor. Do you remember what we were waiting on?
Not specifically, but I do remember that we held it to get more information.
All right. I mean, we can certainly hold it again, since this is probably a matter that we would want the benefit of the city solicitor's presence on, and I don't see her here this evening. So, go ahead, Councillor Walsh.
I just have a question. When I looked at the statute, there is no Part B, so I don't know why it says 20A, paren A, paren B. There is no Part B.
It looks like, looking at the original petition, the A may have been a typo. It may have just been Section 20B, not Section 20A sub B, because the original petition does just say 20B. But we'll have time to check that unless someone feels that we should take action on this evening.
I'm fine. I just thought I'd point it out.
Thank you. Can I have a motion then?
Motion to hold.
Second.
Motion and second. If there's no objection, all right, it will be held by unanimous consent. 27023, Councillor Fleming, on behalf of Ward 5 residents, to relocate the election polling site either back to Simon Park or any other suitable location where traffic is not so dense. This, again, we had held for additional information. I believe that information is still pending. It's just coming up tonight so that, pursuant to our rules, we can take further action and hold it again.
Motion to hold.
All right, motion and second. With no objection, it will be held unanimously. Now we are at 27223, Councillors Kuchar and Fleming, on behalf of all rural residential residents, to initiate a solar change in zoning by introducing additional zoning to protect rural residential neighborhoods. In addition, exclude solar on any watershed overlay district, nor shall solar abut any RA or R2 districts. I'll let Councillor Kuchar speak to this first, and then I'll take public comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This was submitted by Councillor Fleming and myself, as we are the two wards that have the most rural areas of the city. As history notes, there was a solar project in a rural area, which was the Mad River Solar, which is on Ashburnham Street and Stickney Road. That has turned into an utter disaster. I know there's a new company that has gone in and tried to clean up the mess. And now the proposal is the same type of a project up on Oak Hill Road. There seems to be a consistent effort to try to cut down our green to go green. And, you know, that just doesn't make sense. There is watershed issues in both areas, which we need to address, and also the residents, many of whom are here, some of whom are on Zoom, and I can't wait to hear them speak. But we really need to look at the zoning for these solar panels. I know we're limited on what we could do, you know, in regards to the zoning. You know, we can't just outright ban them pursuant to, you know, the Massachusetts regulations. But something needs to be done in order to protect the neighborhoods from these large solar projects, which would come in and basically create not only an eyesore, but also a flooding issue, which can be noted in the Mad River Solar. A lot of flooding issues have affected the neighborhoods in those areas, specifically on Ashburnham Street. So, you know, something needs to be done. The council needs to come together and try to somewhat limit the amount of solar projects that can go in. From what I understand from the planning board, we already have 8 large solar projects in the area. Normally, they're hidden back, so they're not viewable from the road. But, you know, these are in areas where there's not too many residential areas. So it's not the eyesore that, you know, people would expect to come out on their back porch or their front door and see this monstrosity in front of them. So therefore, Councillor Fleming and I have decided that we filed this petition to try to work with the constituents to come up with some sort of resolution in order so that everybody can be happy.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to open it up for public comment. We only currently have one person logged in on Zoom. If it's all right with the people in attendance, I'm going to go to him first just so that there's no risk of forgetting on the back end. It's a lot harder to forget people who are sitting right in front of me. But I do want to just note for anyone who wishes to comment that there won't be any actual ordinance voted on tonight. We don't have actual ordinance language in front of us or anything like that. So I don't want to get anyone's expectations too advanced. But on the flip side, there will be other opportunities to talk about this as we move through the process.
Mr. President, just to, you know, if not stepping out of bounds, this is just to approve us looking at the ordinance.
Right.
Not to actually change the ordinance at this point in time.
Right. This is basically where we will be recommending to the council, if we approve this petition, it will be a recommendation to the council that we continue to study this issue and draft up an ordinance to address as many of these concerns as we are able. That being said, Mr. Twiskala, I'm going to enable your mic. Just make sure you're unmuted on your end, and then you will have 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Warren Twiskala, 32 Gloria Ave, and I live with my wife in a residential A area that is adjacent to a rural residential area that would be the site of the Oak Hill Solar project should it go through. I am in favor of moving this proposal forward because I think that having such a big industrial facility next to a residential neighborhood will really ruin the character of the neighborhood. So Councillor Kuchar has mentioned the visual impact quite a few times. Along with that, there is he also mentioned the water issues, you know, which we're currently seeing. And I'm sure that the folks who do the studies on the wetlands and wastewater are doing it with the best information they have, but I don't see how they can accurately predict what the impact of such a facility would be on our neighborhood. Going back, I don't think that industrial solar farms should have been allowed in the rural residential zoning. I think it was a mistake to allow that. And if it continues to happen, we're going to have a patchwork of these situations throughout the city where we've got this eyesore and environmental issue causing site right next to residential areas. I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience can now approach the center podium. Just please identify yourself by name. If you have a last name that you feel might need spelling, please spell it for the record. And then you will have your 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Charlene Laxo. I live at 31 Gloria Ave in Fitchburg. And realizing that municipalities cannot unreasonably restrict solar development, ordinances can nonetheless be designed to guide development towards appropriate locations in the city. Any new or amended ordinance should take into consideration all of the stakeholders. It needs to balance the rights of property owners to use their land, as well as the rights of abutting and neighboring property owners to live without adverse impacts caused by industrial-scale solar arrays. This seems to be forgotten in the current rush to solar gold. I urge you to consider these rights as you debate amending the current solar ordinance. I also ask you to consider imposing a temporary solar moratorium on development of large-scale solar systems in order to allow the city time to properly modernize the existing ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, I'm Lenny Laxo from 31 Gloria Ave. We agree that the areas in which solar farms are allowed by the zoning ordinance need to have further restrictions as proposed in the petition. In addition, the application requirements required in the ordinance for solar farms really need to be amended to provide more protection for the areas impacted by solar farms, because no matter where a solar farm is allowed and where the lines are drawn on a map, nearby areas might be impacted by a large facility that differs in character from its surroundings. These impacts need to be more thoroughly vetted during the special permit process. For example, the current ordinance requires calculations of storm drainage. While reviewing the Mad River Solar Farm application, I found that Massachusetts regulations do not require that the impervious area of solar panels be considered. This really flies in the face of common sense and might not provide for adequate stormwater management. The state of Minnesota, for example, considers the impervious area of the panels while also providing credit for the pervious area underneath the panels. Our ordinance should also require that this approach be used. Concerning visual impact, we now require that reasonable efforts be made to minimize visual impacts. This does not define how visual impacts should be evaluated. This can be remedied by requiring that the proponent submit a visual impact assessment to the planning board with the application, as done, for example, by the town of Athol. Concerning land clearing, the ordinance now states that clearing of vegetation shall be limited to what is necessary for a solar array. It really implies that the solar array is taking a higher priority over trees. The ordinance does not specifically address forested lands and does nothing to discourage clearing of forests for solar arrays. Mass DOER strongly discourages solar farm locations that result in significant loss of forest land. Significant tree cutting is a problem because of the important water management, cooling, and climate benefits of trees. We should require a study of impacts on forested areas, as done, for example, by the city of Northampton. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know it's difficult for everyone to get out everything they have to say in 2 minutes. If anyone has prepared statements that they're not able to complete feel free to email them, please, and we will disseminate them and take the full statement into account.
Hello, my name is James Wagner, and I live on 58 Pepper Road. So my backyard is where this giant solar farm is going to be placed. I'll give you a little impromptu and family perspective on this. I know we have, flooding issues, flooding topics and eyesores, but being a young adult with a family, putting that back at my house when I have kids who, I moved to the neighborhood because it is a neighborhood, not a solar farm. And I am contemplating moving because of this, and I'm speaking to people in other states and towns. It's not a good thing to have in your backyard, obviously. And also speaking economically, I know a lot of folks are different parts of the demographic, so a lot of people have poured their life in their life into their homes, so they're losing their their equity, their mental health is an issue. So there's a broad arrangement here that I can't really put perspective in 2 minutes, but I wanted to give you my quick synopsis of why I'm opposing this, and not in the legalities of ordinances, and more of a personal touch for you guys. So that's kind of all I have to say today. Thank you.
Anyone else?
How you doing? Name's Chris Kucha, 399 Cathy Street, Fitchburg. Hopefully you guys all come together on board and do what you can about rezoning the whole 9 yards. I didn't move up there. When I moved up there, there was no solar farm up there. If I wanted to live next to one, I would have moved next to one. So as a city, you guys need to come together on board with all the councilors, the mayor, everybody, and do a little thinking and do stuff for the residents instead of thinking about these big corporations and money. Like, let them in. Because you got residents that have been up there for a long time that pay taxes more than Oak Hill Country Club does. So if they want it up there that bad, put it on their greens. They got plenty of room for their golfers to get shade if they get too hot up there. So do what you can, and rezoning, we'd appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing none. Councilors, the matter is before us.
I'll speak.
Councilor Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council President. When I was running for this office, I met with a number of the people who are here in this audience and a number of others in the neighborhood. And a lot of people expressed a concern about a number of issues. One is what this gentleman right here said about it's his backyard, and I think I actually spoke with you. I think your family was having a bonfire in your backyard when we met. I think that would be lost, and it's not just aesthetics. It's a concern for, as a number of people have pointed out, it's the flooding issue. There's already flooding issues there, and I think that this would exacerbate it. I realize that there are limitations on what we can do in terms of zoning because of state laws, but I think that we need to look at that and see how we can address that so that the flooding is not increased, so that there's no ill effects on the reservoir that is there, and to keep the neighborhood the way the neighborhood is now without the solar array. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Councilor Kuchar.
I also think it's important to note that it is a fact that when a solar array such as this goes in, property values go down. And the fact that this doesn't benefit anybody except for Oak Hill Country Club. It doesn't benefit the residents. It doesn't benefit the city. It doesn't benefit anybody. And I really think we need to look at this and rezone So to limit, and again, just for the public who's watching and the people that are here, you know, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts doesn't allow us to unreasonably restrict these things. But I think we can come up with a very narrowly tailored restrictions, you know, to help the residents out in these neighborhoods and also in the rural areas such as Mad River Solar. You know, there are many areas, not just up on the Shea Street area, but Ward 3 is very rural. There are lots of farmland in Ward 3, and there are many you know, forested areas in Ward 5 as well. So, I mean, we really need to also think, and I know it's kind of a, you know, nobody really, a lot of the residents care, I should say, and I care too. But we're losing our natural resources, our wildlife. You know, that is a big concern for our residents too. I have, you know, many constituents who send me pictures of animals that, you know, they see in this area. Bald eagles, you know, deer, of course. There's, you know, many different species up in that area that will be lost, you know, if we just let them deforest the area and just put up these solar arrays. So it's something that we do, as Mr. Kuchar said, no relation, by the way. Well, actually, a far distant relation, according to my father. But as Mr. Kuchar said, we do need to come together and help the residents out and try to narrowly tailor something. So I think Councillor Cragen raised her hand too.
Sure. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke tonight. Warren, Chris, James, Lenny, Charlene. And I think that we've been having this conversation for some time. I live in Ward 3, so near this proposal that I drive by 20 signs anytime I go someplace. It is clear the neighborhood is organized and has a point because of the wetlands that are just beyond the boundaries. I'd like to note for those watching who may not be aware, Lenny Laxo, our third speaker, is a former DPW commissioner, and you made some really excellent points as to other communities such as Athol in having the visual impact be part of the criteria. And was it Springfield with the study of impacts? Did I get that town right? Northampton, okay. Yeah, so Northampton. But also the fact that Massachusetts does not take into account the effect of the impervious areas. It seems like just a oversight of enormous proportion, and something that if we in our role can reflect, can review and reflect and include, that seems like, I mean, this is. I see this ordinance as having, all of these different pieces to protect the environment, to protect the residents, to protect the people who have been there for, James, you haven't been there that long, and some folks have been there for decades and decades. We don't want to lose you. We don't want to lose any of you. We don't want that neighborhood to suddenly be considered, at a lesser value. That's not in our best interest as a city, nor is it kind. We're not here to do that, and I'm a little surprised I don't see anyone here from a solar group speaking on behalf of the solar panels. There is not a single person in this room who is from the solar, world, industry, business, what have you, speaking on behalf of, no, we need to be putting it everywhere. So I think that omission sends a message as well. I'm eager and enthusiastic to see what we can craft to protect Fitchburg. And again, I thank you all for coming to speak.
Mr. Chair, it's also important to note that nobody from Oak Hill is here either. Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. And on the motion, I'd just like to say a few words as well. I also had the opportunity to speak with, I think, everyone here at one point or another. And I am entirely on board. I think that we desperately need a more comprehensive and more thoughtful zoning regime for large-scale solar. I think that Massachusetts loves to think of itself as a very forward-thinking state, very ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, due to some of the bureaucracy on Beacon Hill, it can actually be very much behind the curve in terms of adapting to changes in circumstances and technology. And this is one of those cases. When the state passed its statute that said that cities and towns cannot unreasonably restrict solar installations, a solar installation meant roof panels on your house.
Yep.
There was no such thing as a solar farm when that law was put into place. But the state just hasn't gotten around to updating it because they pass a relatively small number of bills per year, and this one isn't sexy. This one isn't something that's going to put any legislator on the front page of the Boston Globe. And I think our delegation understands this and is working as well as they can to get this repaired, but I think there's a great need for basically everyone in all the legislators who represent areas outside the greater Boston area to get on board with this. Because, of course, it's easy for a legislator from Boston to vote in favor of protecting solar installations because it sounds good, it sounds green, and they're never going to go in his constituents' backyards. But I think the distinction, though, between large-scale solar and all the other things protected by the so-called Dover Amendment, which is the zoning exemption statute, is actually where there's some opportunity for us as well. When they say we can't unreasonably restrict, most of the things the Dover Amendment protects, that basically means we can't restrict it at all, except for direct safety concerns. Like we can say you can't pack 100 people into a 3-family building, but beyond that, we have very little ability. It's, educational uses, religious uses, things that municipalities may have political reasons for wanting to restrict, but there's not a lot of direct physical impact on a neighborhood if someone puts, a church at the end of the block or something like that. It's a lot different. Large-scale solar is different. And I think that we can craft an ordinance that will convince whoever ends up needing to review it, whether that be the courts or a state regulatory agency, that it is reasonable to restrict solar on the basis of how it affects our communities. This isn't about any kind of discrimination like it might be in a religious case. It's not about you guys saying, oh, we don't want all those whoever, having their worship services in our neighborhood. It's not about that. It's not about saying, we're a neighborhood of, older people. We don't want a bunch of kids at a school in our neighborhood. It's not about that. It's about your health and safety. And yes, your property values, which I do feel you have a right to, an entitlement to. And so it's going to take time to craft this into an ordinance that is actually passable and that can actually pass muster, legally speaking, assuming that the legislature doesn't change the law in the meantime. But I'm in. I'm in until we've got this done. And then also on the motion, I have Councillor Kuchar.
Thank you very much. Chairman and Mr. President. One of the speakers tonight, Mrs. Latsko, she brought up the subject of a moratorium until we get that done. Could we take that up with this, or should that be done by a separate petition?
I would think it would probably be a separate petition, not only because the nature of it would be somewhat different, but also because I think that would require probably a bit more research into the legalities than the zoning itself. I don't know if there's any case where there has been a moratorium allowed on a Dover Amendment subject.
Well, it would be temporary until we
right,
get this
right.
done. It wouldn't be a permanent moratorium.
Of course.
It would just be like a temporary order.
Right. I'm just not sure if there's been any such thing approved by the courts in the past or rejected in the past. So I think it might be cleaner if we do it as a separate petition. But if it is legally permissible, I'd be all in favor. Because the last thing we want is more projects getting started and grandfathered while we're considering how we want to regulate this.
Exactly.
So certainly, if it turns out that that is a thing we can do, then I'm all in favor. Councillor Walsh.
And I think in reference to what Councillor Kuchar just said, I think that might be something that the city solicitor could weigh in on and let us know whether that is possible to do.
Exactly. And actually, if any of you would like to either send that email to the city solicitor and copy me, or just ping me after we all get home tonight to remind me to send it off, we'll get her right on that. Councillor Cregan?
Yeah, I'm sure that folks on Chase Street may already be all over this, but just to let the general public know, it looks like an act regarding municipal zoning powers by Representative McMurtry of Dedham relative to municipal zoning powers in relation to the installation of solar energy systems. So this is an act regarding municipal zoning powers and giving more local control. So Jake Oliveira, who was my colleague on school committee for many years and who is now a senator, it looks like the reporting date is extended to Friday, June 14th, pending concurrence. So I think we should all be looking carefully at this. And I know we've all been in touch with Representative Krishmerek and also Senator Cronin, and I think, anyway. So there is something there, but as we all know, what happens east doesn't necessarily come in this direction as needed. But I'm also I'm doing searches on some of these other solar, and there's plenty of language out there. But city solicitor, absolutely.
Excellent. So I have a motion and second to approve the petition, which again will be to instruct that we will continue to try to craft this ordinance. And it appears we have unanimous consent. So it will be recommended to the council unanimously. It will come up on our agenda next Tuesday. And that concludes our business for the evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Seeing no objection, we are adjourned.